And as the Scots were standing in, Robert the Bruce was out the front with his men digging pits. You know, because if you think of heavy cavalry charging, you actually only need shallow pits for a horse to stumble, and it brings down other horses. So there was rows of pits in front of the Scots. And as Bruce was out there marshalling these pits being dug, the English burst out of the trees of the Torwood. And Bruce had a circlet of gold on his head. He was on a wee pony of the size of a Shetland pony, one of these wee ones. It said that his feet actually trailed on the ground. And he just had on a tunic. And Sir Henry de Bohun, who was one of the English knights, spotted the sunlight on the circlet of gold and shouted, "It's the King of Scots, he's mine," and went into the full charge. Now the whole Scottish army could see this from the hilltop position, and Bruce must have looked puny on this little pony, with this Englishman on this huge battle horse. Now they weren't like Arab stallions, they were like Shire horses, like Clydesdales, huge muscular beasts, encased in armour. He's sitting on the back of it with chainmail and plate armour over that, with the plumes and the banners flying and things, with a lance, and he's couched his lance and he's come in to take Bruce. Bruce just sat there, and the Scots must have held their breath watching this. And as the lance tip was inches away from him, he sidestepped, the axe came out the socket at the side of his saddle, and he's cut down. And to give you an idea of the power of this man, and every one of the chronicles has agreed in this, that he fought the first blow. He cut him, even on the move, through chainmail and plate armour down to the bottom of the breastbone, straight through. It's almost split him and his body in half. De Bohun's horse went on for a few steps, and then he fell from his back in bloody ruin. Bruce had hit him so hard that the shaft of his axe broke about here, and he was left with a foot or so of oak in his hand. And he calmly turned his horse, and of course the story would lose nothing in the telling going back through the ranks. He knew what he was doing. We were outnumbered 4-1. Here was a man in a wee pony, took out a fully armed knight. But he went back to the Scots' positions, including the Black Douglas, who I've just written this book about, with this foot of wood in his hand. And the Scots commanders all went, "Are ye daft? You're the king! That was stupid. You can't take risks like that," because that's the way it's always been in Scotland. They gave him abuse anyway. It didn't matter if he was a king. "Are you daft? You know what I mean? That was stupid." And he went, "I know. Bust my good axe." And you know, this was documented at the time, so we could safely say it happened. You know, I used to have a beautiful kilt pin that everybody tried to liberate off me, and it was a wee broken axe, you know, in the sort of two halves joined by the pin. Everybody went, I want that," because they all knew it was meant to symbolise the axe of Robert the Bruce. And I've managed to hang on to it for years, although I can't fall asleep in front of any of my friends because I know they would just take it, you know. So Bruce was the master of the axe. After Bannockburn, he became known as the first knight of Christendom. The English losses at Bannockburn were terrible, absolutely terrible, because Bruce was a genius and he had the landscape of Scotland fight for him. It wasn't just a case of brute force. He used the land itself, and was huge damage. Now at the second day's fighting in Bannockburn, at the second day, the Scots said, "Let's just do this, we can do it, we're outnumbered 4-1, what the hell, we've fought worse than that, let's go for it." We took on the might of the Roman Empire, here we go. And they marched down the hill towards the English forces. Now Edward II of England, the son of Longshanks, who had fought against Wallace, he watched the Scots come with their spear points outstretched and the war horns blowing and all the rest of it, and he really couldn't believe that we meant it. He thought they'd only to turn up and we would go, "Oh, we're sorry." So as the Scots come marching down the hill, he actually turned to his commanders and went, they don't really mean to fight, do they? And at that point, the Brabanach that I was talking about earlier, this Brabanach means the little speckled house. This wee silver, it's like a wee croft house shape. It's a little silver box about that size, and it's said to contain the bones of St Andrew, and it's covered in Celtic artwork, all engraved in wee bits of copper and gold. This was lifted on a pole above the Scots army by the Abbot of Arbroath, and as the Scots saw this, the whole army dropped to its knees, and they all bowed their heads for a few seconds. And Edward went, "Look, they're kneeling, they've come to ask for mercy from England." And his commanders, knowing the truth, went, "They're begging for mercy, but not from you. These men will win all or die this day." And of course, as the Brabanach was taken down, the Scots just went into the charge. And although the fighting went on for several hours, The Bannockburn sits in a huge gorge that's about 100 feet deep, but it was so choked with English bodies that it said a man could cross from one side to the other dry shod because he could stand on the press of bodies. Now the Brabanach that I was talking about, as you walk in the Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh, it's just inside the front door and it sits in a little glass case, and you can look at this that the Scots looked at on the day at Bannockburn, and it's wee things like that as a historian that just blow me sideways. I can look at this and know that they stood there, that Robert the Bruce was familiar with it. Now, I have a book on Robert the Bruce too, but don't have it with me, which isn't a great help, you know. But I'm just sort of basically going through wee stories about things here. But I suppose I better talk about the clothing and weapons and things like that. This garment I've got on is the plaid. We call it the plaid. If somebody will say, oh, I like your plaid, you know. I know that you tend to call the material plaid or plaid or whatever. We call it tartan. The name has sort of flipped somewhere as it's crossed the Atlantic, you know. There was maybe a storm come out the other side going, hey, I don't know. But, I think what's up with me today is I haven't had a drink last night. As a Scot, I find that extraordinary, but I had a run-in with your police here, as I was saying earlier, and I thought it was sensible not to have a few beers before I drove off the mountain, because I think they're looking for me now, you know. Not amused by me at all, because I'm like, what? And was, you know, typical Scot and behaved the way I would with the police back home. But I would like to appraise you of a great diet we have in Scotland, the Scotch whisky diet, and I'd like to thoroughly recommend it. I've been on it 12 days now, and I've lost 4 days already. So just let me recommend it. It's a wonderful diet.